Sure, I'll give you a little background. So I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, a suburb called Addison,
Oh,
and
I know.
that was all I knew, my little town and my little house and my little family, and I wanted to go somewhere different. So I went to Denver, Colorado for school, and I did not know what I wanted to do, but I like to write. So
Yeah.
I started taking writing classes and then made my major journalism communication. But I really
Yeah.
liked math too. So I was taking calculus and all these classes for fun. My friends were like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "But I like it." So then I decided, well, maybe I should do something with these math and physics and, computer classes. And I talked to the counselor and realized I could get, well, I made it happen. They told me no at first, 2 degrees, because my
Oh,
communication degree was Bachelor of Arts. But if I got a computer science degree, it was Bachelor of Science. So I went an extra
yeah.
year and I got my scholarship extended to go an extra year and get both. And I know,
Wow.
and I really loved journalism. I did internships at TV stations and I loved the energy. And I was like, oh, I want to work at a TV station. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was a very low paying field, not a lot of money, and I would have to move to a little small town to get started. So I was like, well, maybe
Mhm.
I'll work in computers for a couple years and save up some money and then work in journalism. So I
Yeah.
did interviews on campus for my computer science degree. And there was a lot of need, this back before AI, right? A lot of need for
Yeah.
computer people. And they wanted to bring women in, but I did not
Mhm.
get hired because they looked at my education and they said, well, these two things don't go together. What do you really want to do? Back then, people didn't think communication and computers went together. And I was like, no, I really want to do computers. And I guess I didn't convince them very well. So I
Yeah.
never got a job offer in computer science. And my friend was going to go work at a ski resort after college for fun for a year, like a gap year after college instead of before. And she convinced me to do that. And I'm really glad I did that. It was great fun. We were waitresses and we skied for free and we went to all kinds of parties and met lots of boys and had a great time. And then at the end of the season, people were talking about like, oh, we go to Australia when it's summer here and winter there and work at a ski resort there.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, you should do that too. And I'm like, how long have you been doing that? Oh, let's see, about 8 years. They were like almost 30. And I was like, I don't want to be doing that when I'm almost 30.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to try to get a job in television. And it's very competitive to work in TV news. And I didn't.
Mhm.
And I tried and tried and I didn't get any jobs. So I was looking at other ways to be a journalist. And I got my first
Yeah.
job at a newspaper, a little small local community newspaper, making $16,000 a year. A year.
Yeah.
It was,
That's
and even back then, it was a while ago, but that was still not very much money. Um, but I really liked what I did. And so then I followed this path as a reporter. So I worked at a little small paper and then I got promoted to their political paper that covered politics throughout the whole state. And then I moved to Los Angeles because I met someone who got me connections to be an entertainment reporter. And then I spent a couple years
Mhm.
on the red carpet, being an entertainment reporter, interviewing all sorts of celebrities. Oh my gosh, I have so many stories. Tom Cruise and Will Smith, and it was very fun. I
Mhm.
loved it. I loved it. Um, but I
Yeah.
really wanted to work in television. I was still working for newspapers, right? So sometimes you start doing something in one area and people they define you that way. Oh, you're the newspaper reporter. No, I want to be a TV reporter. So I kept trying to improve my, back then you had to create a videotape and send it in the mail to get a job in TV, or you had to drive to the TV station in another city and meet the news director and make him watch your tape and try to get hired. And I probably
Yeah.
sent well over 1,000 videotapes and I went on, well more than 100 meetings. They weren't always interviews. Sometimes you would drive to a city just to go to the 3 TV stations and meet the news directors, even if they didn't have an opening, and they would meet with you and watch your tape and keep you in mind for the next time they had an opening. Very competitive. But I
Yeah.
really wanted this. So I did this, and in the meantime I had met somebody and I had fallen in love and we had moved in together, and but he knew I wanted to get this job in television and it would probably be a small town. And
Mhm.
I was actually working at a magazine called Electronic Media
Yeah.
and a TV news director in Rockford, Illinois. You probably know where Rockford is, in not, just outside of Chicago. Um, Remembered seeing my picture that I had been working for them, and remembered meeting me and watching my videotape, and found me through the magazine and called me and said, I have a job for you. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, I'm going to be in the area for Christmas to visit my family. And I went and met with him and I got the job offer. And I told my boyfriend at the time, like, why don't you see if you can get a job? And he was a writer too. He was a musician. He's a rock and roll guy, and he was a writer. And so I said, go to the to the newspapers in, Rockford. And he was like, okay. And he had done some freelance writing for the newspaper where I worked. I had gotten him in. Sometimes you have to help
Wow.
the men along. I had gotten him, and so he shows them his clips of the things he had written at the newspapers in LA, and they were like, we'll hire you on the spot.
Wow.
Because he had written for LA newspapers and here was this little town. Whereas the TV stations didn't care so much that I had written for newspapers in LA, because I hadn't been a on camera reporter in LA. So I got a job offer and he got a job offer, and he didn't
Mhm.
really want to move to Rockford, but he loved me and he did. So we moved to this little town, and then it's very typical in TV news that you work for a year and then you send your tape to a bigger market, and then you move to another town and another town. And so we did that.
Yeah.
We moved from Rockford to San Luis Obispo to Los Angeles to Miami, and the last place I was on staff as a TV reporter was Miami. And I was at that time I wanted to have children and I was trying to get
Oh,
pregnant
okay.
and I was having trouble.
Okay.
A lot of women have fertility issues, so I had a couple miscarriages, and then I came up to the Chicago area to visit family. My grandma had a big birthday party, and I met with the news directors, and one of them offered me freelance work, and
Yeah.
and we had both been in Miami and we had not been happy there, and then we had gotten laid off, so we moved to the Chicago area, and I was doing
Yeah.
freelance work for a TV network called CLTV, Chicagoland Television. And
Mhm.
then um, a station in Milwaukee said, oh, we want you to um, come up and help us because we have someone on maternity leave. Here I was trying to have a baby, and they had somebody who was taking time off to give birth, and they wanted me to come up for 1 month, and so I did that 1 month. Okay, you never know what's going to happen. Okay, that 1 month turned into 15 years. Okay, so don't ever
Oh.
say no to an opportunity because you think, oh, this isn't exactly what I want, or even a man, because I didn't think I was gonna marry my musician boyfriend, but I did. So so we were trying to get pregnant, and I was working up in Milwaukee, and he would come up and stay with me in the hotel, and that's where my son was conceived. So I have 2 children now, and and then when my son came along, I was like, oh, I don't want to leave my baby. And my husband had a good job.
Yeah.
He had he had gotten a job as the editor of guitar.com on the internet. This is during the .com bubble. We didn't know it was a bubble. And so he was
Yeah.
making good money. So he was kind of in the tech industry, at the beginning, the
Mhm.
early tech industry, the .com bubble. So he was the editor of guitar.com, and I was reporter at the TV station in Milwaukee, and I got pregnant and I had my baby, and I decided he was making good money. I wanted to stay home with my baby. So I was
Mhm.
not working for 6 months. And then I wanted to go visit the TV station and bring my baby. Look at my baby. Everyone does that. Oh, ooh and ah. And my
Yeah.
managing editor said, "Oh, we really miss you." And I said, "Oh, I miss it too. It's hard to just be a mom when you are ambitious and you want a career." But I said I would only
Yeah.
want to work, one or 2 days a week. Ha ha. I said it as a joke. As a joke. I didn't think it would really happen. And he said, "Oh, I
Hmm.
think I could arrange that." Because I had been working 5 days a week. And I said, "Wow." And so I tell women all the time, ask for what you want. Don't be afraid. Don't think it might not
Yeah.
happen. Ask, push, come up with a plan, show them the ROI for them. And he said, okay. And so I started back at work 2 days a week to be with
Yeah.
my kids the other 5 days. It was so great. All my friends were like, "Oh, I'm so envious. You have your career, but you can do all the stay-at-home mom things." I was a Girl Scout
Yeah.
leader and a soccer coach because this is what I wanted to do. Not everybody, everyone's different, but I knew what I wanted.
Hmm.
But when I was figuring out how to have childcare for my baby while my husband was working and I was being a reporter 2 days a week, I would find somebody and then they would work a couple days and then they would leave after a couple of months. Oh, I found another job that's full time. And so 12 different childcare providers in the first 4 years of being a working mom. I
Oh
was
my gosh.
very stressed out. Every time I would
Yeah.
find someone, then they would leave. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. So
Hmm.
there was not a good way to find somebody that really fit what I needed. And eventually, after 4 years, I met Miss Dawn. Okay, I ran a little ad in a newspaper. Newspapers were still around,
Yeah.
and she responded, and she lived right in my community in Woodridge. She was a mile away. She could have been there all along, but I didn't know about her. So I kind of
Okay.
stored this in my brain. Gee, it would be nice if there was some technology that could help me know about Miss Dawn, There were there were like websites like care.com, but it didn't, you had to pay subscriptions, money was very
Hmm.
tight, and you could advertise yourself, but you might not reach everyone. So I worked for 15 years at the TV station, and then my um and in the meantime, my husband got laid off because the dot-com bubble burst. And so he
Okay.
never really got another job. I never got a full-time job. When he got laid off, I tried to find a full-time job, but then the recession hit and it was very hard. So we were
Yeah.
just kind of doing this, doing that. And I used to listen to audiobooks. This is a big thing that I learned in my life. So many things from audiobooks, which is actually different than podcast because it's more like one big concept and you listen to the whole book. So
Yeah.
I lived in Chicago and I worked in Milwaukee. I didn't want to move up there. And 2 days a week was okay to drive. It was almost 4 hours every time I worked, 2 hours up and 2 hours back. And
Yeah.
I would listen to these audiobooks. And at first, I just listened to whatever. And then I got a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad that taught me about wealth and passive income and real estate. And I was like, ooh, we could use some extra income. Maybe this would work. So I took these
Yeah.
concepts I listened to, and I didn't even know anything about this book. It was just accidental. I became an accidental entrepreneur. I listened to these
Okay.
concepts and I was like, I'm going to try this. And then I got a rental property and then I got another one. And then I
Yeah.
ended up having a side business in real estate.
Yeah.
And that's how I became an entrepreneur. And then years later, when our kids were older, we were teaching them about entrepreneurship, and we were playing this game. And I went on Craigslist to show them about this game was learning about business, about how to buy businesses. And I showed them an example in real life. And I decided I'm going to take them to see what it's like to buy a business, but we're not going to really buy the business. But then we went and met with this family who was selling this family business, and it was such a good deal. I bought the business with like the last money I had in my checking account. I take risks. I get a lot of
Hmm.
things I want in life because I take risks. So we got this other business. So now I'm a serial entrepreneur, right? Two businesses. And I'm kind of running them
Yeah.
on my own. And I'm still a reporter and I'm being an active mom. I'm running the Girl Scout troop. I went through some years where I was very stressed out as a working mom, right? Trying to do it all. Shouldn't try to do that. Um,
Mhm.
and so then I was covering this conference as a reporter, and they were talking about in tech, we solve problems with technology and we can make a lot of money if we solve a big problem. And I'm like, oh, moms have a problem. They have too much to do and not enough time and they're stressed out. And they can't find someone to help them with their kids. Like I went through 12 nannies and I was at the time driving my kids like 2 hours a day to all their activities and I wanted to coordinate carpools, but there was no easy way to do that. And I came up with this idea, what if I could help moms find a substitute mom, a mom sub. And I came up with this name and I came up with this idea and I did a little research and I wrote out like an executive summary and a pitch and I sent it to my friend who I grew up with in Addison but lived in Silicon Valley. And he said, this is a really good idea. You should do this. And then I started trying to do it and I realized, oh my gosh, this is hard. This isn't just something I can do a few hours a week and like, oh, boom, it's there. I'm like, I have my real estate business and my sign business and my children and my reporting. I can't do this other thing too. So I put it aside. I wasn't sad. I wasn't like, oh, I'll never do it. It's just not right for me now. So I put it aside. And then my son went to college, and then my daughter went
Yeah.
to college, and then I said, now I want to focus on this thing. I have more time in my life. So I want to
Yeah.
focus on this business. I didn't really know that a tech startup was different than a small business. Very different. Okay. So even though I went to college for computer science, never went into that
Yeah.
industry. I understand programming and logic and business, but I didn't know about the world of tech startups. Nothing. Didn't even know
Yeah.
that was a thing. Okay. Didn't know what I didn't know. So I start trying to make this into a business and I'm learning about how to get an app. This is before AI.
Mm.
Like I have to hire somebody and it's very expensive and then my friend
Yeah.
gets involved, my friend in Silicon Valley. And he says he has a home in Thailand. He has a wife from Thailand. And so he said I'll find somebody offshore to build the app and
Hmm.
it won't cost much money. So
Yeah.
that's what we did. And then I just started going down this road and I was still working a job as as a reporter, marketing person in media. So I came up with my idea for MomSub in 2015. And then I worked on it a little bit, put it aside. 2020, I started working on it part-time, but I wasn't getting paying customers.
Mm.
2023, I finally got my first paying customer. Okay, 3 years ago, and then I started getting more paying customers, and I figured out a system. And then my advisor in Silicon Valley, who invested a little bit of money in me, said, "You have to quit your job and focus on this full time." And I'm like, "But it's not making enough money to pay me. You have to just do it and figure it out." Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be broke again, like when I was $16,000 a year as a reporter. And that's basically what I did. But I didn't have kids. My husband and I are married. He's still a musician and a writer. He's not like a guy that makes a lot of money. And so I told him I want to do this, and he said, "Okay, we have a house, and we'll figure it out. And we have our real estate, and sometimes it's up, and sometimes it's down. It gives me a little bit of cushion to have my other businesses, but not a lot because I'm delegating the things that need to be done in my other businesses." So that I can spend all my time on MomSub. So when you have to pay people to do things in your business, you make less money. If your business, if you take 50% of profits, but you're doing 50% of the work, and then you hire people to do all the work, then you only get 5 or 10% of the profits. It's not much, right? So at
Yeah.
least in a small business. But I did it. I quit my job. I focused on MomSub full time, and I've been
Yeah.
doing MomSub full time for 2 years, and we now have revenue every month. And this year,
Hmm.
I got the revenue to cover the operating expenses. So we're not negative, but there's not enough to pay me. So it's still very hard, but it's worth it because I'm solving a problem for moms that I had. I don't want moms to have to go through 12 different childcare providers in 4 years to find the right one. I don't want moms to have
Yeah.
to stress out, and when they have their job has agreed to let them work part-time, and then they call me crying like, I don't think I think I'm asking for too much. I really wanted to work part-time and find good childcare and be with my kids, but I can't find the right childcare. Maybe I'm asking for too much. And I tell them, no, you're not asking for too much. Women don't ask for enough, right? You can do it. We're going to help you. So we help them find the right childcare. And so I have a big mission.
Hmm.
My mission is to prevent 1 million women from leaving the workforce every year because they have childcare challenges and they don't want to, but they leave. And so I want my mission is to help moms stay in their careers if they want. And our big vision is that anytime moms need anything related to childcare, they think of us. They think of MomSub, that we become a big company, a unicorn, IPO, and we help millions of moms. So that's the big vision. And
Hmm.
so that motivates me because every day is very hard, very hard. I'm trying to figure out how to pay my bills when I don't have money from my company. I'm trying,
Yeah.
I get a client and then they go away, and then people get upset because somebody I sent them doesn't work out. So, and then today I've spent hours working on an SOP, standard operating procedure, because my
Hmm.
recruiter, who was doing a good job of sending out new interviews, hasn't been doing it lately, and I need to give her a step-by-step process because I actually had her doing more things with AI, but it's taking up more of her time. So it's always, you have to constantly, you don't have anyone to tell you what to do. You have to figure it out on your own. So that's my whole journey.